Asante sana wakili. You don't have to struggle too much about excellencies, honorable, what. Just call me Kiraitu, and that's good enough. I'm very, very happy. I'm very, very happy to be with you today and seeing some old friends. Our vice chair is here, Senator Siengo. A very old friend, Jerry Kabeberi, who actually introduced me to this struggle. I met her. That time she was working for an insurance company, way back in the 70s. And she's the only woman who earned some money. So, she paid fees for Koiwa Mwere when he had been detained without trial. Not during Moi's time, during Kenyatta's time, the Kenyatta one. And we tried to find out whether she was his girlfriend, but she said she didn't know him. But she felt she had to support him. Can we appreciate her? So allow me to read a short speech which I made. Family of the late Raila Odinga, seen by Honorable Winnie Odinga, our vice chair, Senator Siengo, CMD, board members and staff who have put all this together. Allow me to call you all fellow lovers of democracy. See my good friend Honorable Yeremia Kioni is among you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the chairman of the CMD. I think Mako has read the list of those who went ahead of me. So, but I'm currently the chair. And at CMD, we were formed in early 20s, early 2000 and something, with the sole purpose of protecting multi-party democracy in the country. Protecting it, and we do it in two ways: strengthening the capacity of various political parties, and secondly, trying to promote multi-party cooperation in key areas affecting our nation. So we promote the dialogue. You saw us with the PDF, the People's Dialogue Forum, which we had at Uhuru Park with about 3,000 people, and we do it continuously because we don't want the fires of democracy, to die in this country. So, as chair of Center for Multi-Party Democracy, it's my singular honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to this historic occasion where we are celebrating the International Human Rights Day under the theme Human Rights, Our Everyday Essentials, by celebrating and honoring the father of multi-party democracy in Kenya, the late Right Honorable Raila Odinga. I've been requested to make a few remarks on Raila the Enigma. And before I do so, this young man, from Chetty, we used to have problems with him when I was a member of parliament because he used to say that Wananchi don't love us. And we asked him why. He says, no, they're just following you the way flies follow a carcass. So the flies love the dead animal, or they're just following the food. Yeah, so when I came here today, I remember that. So it's not easy for me to talk about Raila as an enigma, because an enigma is a person who is mysterious, a person who is difficult to understand, and a person who is impossible to fully explain. So how am I supposed to talk about that? I think one of the people, a philosopher who was inspired revolutionaries and reformers for centuries is Karl Marx. But I think those who have read closely about Karl Marx, you know, his funeral is the funeral of Karl Marx was attended by only 11 people. And at that time, you know, it was like he had lost, it's like he had lost the spark, the fire, you know, that time. And he stood the risk of even being forgotten. But if you compare him with Raila Odinga, the funeral of Raila Odinga was attended by hundreds of thousands, you know, of Kenyans. And you saw what happened at Kango, Jaramogi, making a pilgrimage. A lot of people from all walks of life showed up there. We in CMD were not able to deliver any bulls to Kango Kanjaramogi to show our respect, but we thought we could do this forum as our own way of delivering our bulls for Raila. A lot of things have been said and written about Raila, especially after his death, and I believe a lot more is going to be said. And there will be a debate about Raila and what he stood for, what he said, for many decades to come. I think it can be true to say Raila has been at the center of every political struggle in this country from 1980s until the time of his death. And no Kenyan has made greater personal sacrifices for democracy and freedom in this country more than the late Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. I think this is a fact of history. You might like him or you might dislike him, but you can't change that fact. It is true. Personally, I met Raila in Shimoratewa prison way back in 1984. He had been detained without trial for his alleged participation in planning the aborted coup of 1982. You know, I can give you the inner story. For you to be taken to court for treason, then Kioni, you know, you require corroboration from an independent witness. So Raila could not be taken to court because there was no independent witness. Anybody who would have been in court was a person who would either be implicated or not. So there are no evidence to take Raila to court, or even to charge him with treason. So they took a shortcut of detaining him without trial. And those days, even lawyers were not around to see detained people, although there were clear rights in the Constitution. So we had to take the Attorney General to court for us to get an order to be around to go and see Raila in Shimoratewa prison, and not know where we were being taken. We were put in a chopper and through from Wilson Airport, Okapigam around, but finally they took us to Shimoratewa, and where I found Raila and staged a hunger strike in prison. They are not eaten for a number of days, and he was saying, "You rather die rather than eat this food." They were giving terrible food. So I remember it was my first time to meet him, and we had quite an argument. And I was telling him, if you die, what do you think Moi would think? Wouldn't Moi be celebrating that you are dead? So we convinced him to survive so that he can live and fight Moi, another day. So the officer in charge, we asked to see the food he was eating. So they brought eggs and rice, and then so we asked Raila, is this the food you have refused to eat? So Raila said no. So then we said, okay, from now on, let him be given this food because you have no problem with it. Because the next time we're trying to see him, we were not there, then taking him to Naivasha. So it's another. So that's how we got to know Raila. And those days, because they had changed the constitution in 1982 to make Kanu the only role-of party in the country and making opposition, any form of opposition, illegal. So there was no other way of removing Moi and the Kanu from power. So it was legitimate to overthrow him through the force of arms. And for us those days, revolution was acceptable. And in fact, it was the only way of removing live presidents, from power. And we were inspired by other revolutions of the world, Fidel Castro in Cuba. We can read books from Franz Fanon, Che Guevara, all those people. And Raila really liked Fidel Castro. That is why his son was called Fidel. And then near South Africa, near home South Africa, there was Winnie Mandela. That is why this lady is called Winnie. She was called Winnie Mandela. She was called Winnie after Winnie Mandela, so she was a namesake. And even my own children, my son is called Fanon, and my daughter is also called Winnie, after Winnie Mandela. Yeah, so we thought we would remove Moi through a revolution. And that was those like Raila, Koigi, and the others who were trying to do, those days. And then there were very many underground movements, with all manner of names. Until we met a priest in Vika, a German priest. He was called Father Max Stata. He had come from Latin America. And he had seen a lot of coups, the military in that country. And he was telling us the coups and the military takeovers will not be the right way to go. Because it's okay, Moi can be removed through the force of arms. But when the military get in, how are you going to remove them, from power? So a military regime can only be removed through another military coup, isn't it? Even a revolutionary government, once in power, can also be removed only through another revolutionary government. And this would cause a cycle of bloodshed. And Africa will be forever in chaos, anarchy, because of this manner. And that is why the struggle for multi-party democracy became important, because at least there will be a limitation of the terms of the rulers, and there will be a democratic way of removing. You don't like them, you can remove them through the ballot box and all that. So this struggle to change Section 2A, so that we can return the country back to multipartyism, was informed by our understanding that there's a futility in trying to change through armed struggle. And Raila again became the champion of fighting for this democratic space for democratic, for the second revolution. We were younger people. Raila was a few years older. So, but he was the leader of the young Turks. And we did not have sufficient contact with the people or politics. So we had to work with all the people who were there then, the veterans, Jaramogi himself, Kinamwaside Muriro, and others. It is the struggle for multi-party democracy which introduced us to a country. I have not been in a place like Mandera. I went there in 1992 to campaign for Jaramogi in those days. And I remember when we landed there, instructions were given that we should not sleep in any hotel in Mandela. There was a small hotel there called Red Sea Hotel where we had been booked. But immediately we got in, the manager came out. The hotel was empty, but he came out and told us, "I'm sorry, the hotel is full." But we had already been booked. So we moved on to the Mandera County Hostel, which was owned by the county council. The manager was very, very happy to receive us. And we were taken to our rooms. But immediately after that, we had a woman screaming at the front office. And we came to know her husband had been arrested. And she had been told, so long as we were in the hotel, her husband would remain in prison. So she had come to plead with the manager to flush us out of the hotel so that her husband can be released. So eventually we were also pushed out of this hotel. But there was another Muzee, I think was called Ibrahim, who took us to his compound, and it was ward. He bought mattresses for us, and for 4 days we slept under a tree, under a mango tree, in Mandera. You know that we intended to stay for so many days. The aeroplane which we had chartered to take us to Mandera, when it came back to Nairobi, they were told not to go back. So we were stranded there. Yes. So I don't want to bore you with more of these stories. Finally, the struggle succeeded. We got multi-party democracy, but the structures of KANU were still in place. We were just a democracy on paper. The dictatorship, the chiefs, and whatever continued. So, and although we had been elected to parliament, I remember I myself was caned by an AP in Nyeri as a member of parliament to Ichapo, Biboko. So, I think, so the struggle continued for another 10 years or so. Then we tried the elections. Of course, there was sham. We couldn't win. Then we tried to bring the opposition together because Moi was winning with only 30% of the votes. And then we couldn't agree. And when Jaramogi passed on in 1994, then 1997, we thought Moi had become so unpopular that anybody can defeat him. So that's how Raila, Wamalwa, Ngilu, and the others, all of them stood because we were thinking Moi would be number 4 or number 5. But again, he beat us. And then we started now reorganizing ourselves again. And fortunately this time, Ngiro Wamalwa and Kibaki agreed to support Kibaki for presidency, Omoro for vice. And then Raila had gone into KANU. He's the one who kicked Kamolo, the Secretary General, out of KANU. And, of course, he is accused of being compromised, etc., etc. But I met somebody called Sir David Steele. We went to be, we were the election monitors in South Africa when Thabo Mbeki was coming in. So we spent a lot of time with Sir David Steele because he was the leader of our team. And he was a friend of the Raila family for a long, long time. So I asked David Steele, please tell me the truth. How come Raila went to work with Moi? And he told me they had done their own analysis and they are the ones who advised him to work with Moi and try to weaken Kanu from within because now the way we were, we couldn't win. So, and Raila went there, and for sure he shook them because kicking Kamodo out of and becoming the Secretary General of Kanu was not a simple thing. Then, then Moi handed over to Huru. So it was some bonus for us because this brought Raila brought back with him Karonso, Saitoti, and many other people. And so it was very easy for us now to win in 2002. Unfortunately, we fought again among ourselves now. After 2002, the composition of the cabinet, there was a quarrel between, there was a secret MOU, how they had divided seats among themselves, which was not honored. And this is what caused the problems. Many of us didn't know about that secret memorandum. So, and this is what led us to lose the referendum for 2005 for the new constitution, and also caused the post-election violence of 2007, 2008. But now, after the negotiations, Raila came in as Prime Minister. We were ministers with him, and we worked very well with Raila. I was the Minister for Energy. Raila was very passionate about energy because he had Minister for Energy during Moi's time. We traveled with him, and he encouraged me a lot. Raila was an engineer. He understood energy better than me. So he's the one who told me in Europe, those people don't have hydro and the other power which they are talking about. They use nuclear energy. And the best way for us is for us to go for nuclear energy in the country. They say France is even exporting nuclear energy to Spain. So why can't we have nuclear energy and export? Yeah, so we started the nuclear energy project. He took me to Korea. We negotiated for it. We went to France, and we appointed Ochiro Ayako to be the head of this project, because then he was the previous minister. And I think the project is still running, but it has not materialized fully, because by now we should have nuclear energy in the country. Then he came up with an idea of kerosene-free Kenya. He said it was very easy. Instead of using mafuta ya taa, why don't we get solar panels? So during the day, you put the panel outside the house, and then it gets power. You can charge your phones. There was even a cooking demonstration in Moranga. Women making a very with the solar. Yeah. So, in addition to pioneering democracy, I think Raila was also the pioneer of green energy, in this country. He was a very forward-looking person. Then, 2010 Constitution. Actually, Raila was the driver of the 2010 Constitution. And now that we are working together on both PNU and ODM, it was easy. So he appointed Anyang' Nyong'o and Janet Ongera into the referendum secretariat. And then I worked with Anyang' Nyong'o from the PNU side and Professor Kawanja. And so we are the ones who were in charge of that campaign. We drove it. Raila started, but he got unwell. I think they were campaigning for the constitution in Nairobi, in Damu Estate. But after he got unwell, we continued the campaign with Kibaki. And because the two contestants were now working together, it was easy to deliver the 2010 constitution. Unfortunately, the church and the current president who were against it at that particular time. But we won. The constitution has opened space. It brought in new ideas about devolution, inclusivity. Actually, it's the most progressive constitution we have in Africa today, because we are even looking at the South African constitution, and they decided, to move a bit higher than the South African constitution. Now, because I don't want to talk forever, let me deal with an aspect about Raila, the enigma. Raila has been in every government. He tried the elections very many times, many disputed, but Raila always emerged with a lot of popularity, even after the elections. And there is no government which could rule in Kenya without support of Raila. So he had to support. Moi could not rule without Raila. Kibaki could not rule without Raila. Uhuru could not rule without Raila. And even Ruto cannot rule without Raila. There are very many people who have gone out, especially among you in social media, saying Raila is a traitor, he has betrayed the people, he has perpetuated status quo. I want to tell you, whenever Raila was, his mission was one. Just like he had gone to dismantle Kanu. He got into every regime with an idea of moving the reform forward. He never abandoned, in whatever situation he found himself. Even now, with Ruto, he has a 10-point agenda, isn't it? Is that not a progressive agenda? So, if, for me, say anything else, but we shall always remember Raila for his patriotism, his fight for freedom, for constitutional electoral reform, and inclusivity. Now, as I sit down, we at the Center for Multiparty Democracy are worried about the trajectory of our democracy. We seem to have made 2 steps forward and 3 steps backwards. We know people are angry. The elections themselves have actually become a threat to democracy, not only in Kenya, but in Africa. And you can see the youth have given up. They are united. Their chemistry and the regimes are wide apart. That's why they are declaring themselves partyless, leaderless, and triballess, everything less. We have been trying to follow that trajectory. And sometimes very good intentions can also take us backwards. We have seen, for example, the Gen Z revolution in Madagascar. Very progressive in what they are talking, but because of that leaderlessness, because of partylessness, they create a governance vacuum, which is occupied by the military and the other conservative forces. So, although we are fighting for multi-party democracy, we feel this could also be a threat, because we can take the country back to where it came from in 1980s and all that. So as you are debating, my friends, please let us engage with the young people and let us see, whereas their demands are legitimate, can we find a way of sustaining, those demands? One way that we can continue with Raila's dream is to make sure that this country will never go back to dictatorship or military dictatorship through any form. I think for me, that is the message I could have. And I think if Raila was alive, he would fight, he will continue fighting to protect and promote the gains of democracy in this country. Long live Raila.
Long live.
Thank you very much. I would like to request you to please appreciate the Honorable Kiraitu Murungi just once more. Thank you so much. You know, my colleague didn't do the introduction properly because he was running. He's rushing out of time. I'm preparing the band because you are going to welcome Mheshimiwa. But to sort of just prepare the ground. The Honorable Kiraitu Murungi, as he told you, he went to Shimoletewa, and this I was picking up from the history books. He was among those crazy, brave lawyers who would represent people like Raila, specifically Raila. They went and they represented him. He was a young advocate then. I think he was also teaching at the university. You can tell that from the way, he's got this slow burn. When ukichapwa nyahunyo na intellectual, they do it slowly, very, very gently, but it lands. So, like that thing he said about being partyless, it's landed in a very uncomfortable place, but it's a true place. Kiraitu, I met the Honorable Kiraitu in my youth. He probably doesn't remember that. He was preparing a manuscript called In the Mud of Politics. And I've always used that as a sort of guidepost for understanding him. Because he engages in politics almost as a mission of necessity. Because I think he's more on this side, he's more on the human rights side, and the politics he does it as pragmatism. And if you go into beyond politics, conversations with him, An Odyssey in Politics, those are books that show some of his thoughts. You see that he's very, very deliberate about how he thinks about this country. Of course, he was